So I'm here today because I'm fortunate enough to be one of the people interviewed by Rod Taylor for his book, where he's talking to 10 different people in Australia doing things in relation to climate change. And so that's how I've ended up here today. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking from Ngunnawal country here in Canberra at the base of Mount Ainslie, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and to future generations. So I wanted to start by saying Happy World Rivers Day, because today is World Rivers Day. And so for the next week on our website, and well, actually maybe mainly on our Facebook page, we'll be talking a lot about rivers and how wonderful they are. And today I've got a presentation that really focuses on the social aspects and the sort of areas that I am focusing my work as I work to really help create communities that are resilient to not only climate change, but to unpredictability, and really looking to each other so that we can work together. That's really what I focus on. So I'll just share my screen. And actually, no, this one. Now, can you see that first slide? Yes? Okay. So this is really what makes my job worthwhile. This lovely man here is my husband, Tom, who works for the Department of Defence, but is still a Rivers of Carbon supporter. He comes out every time. Greening Australia, who are one of the partner organisations that I work with. This is Stuart. He's from Water New South Wales, one of the clients that we work with. Andy from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, and this is Jeff, who is the landowner, and he's putting his feet up because we've just planted 500 trees on National Tree Day. So Rivers of Carbon is the on-ground program of the Australian River Restoration Centre. So as David mentioned previously, the Australian River Restoration Centre is a not-for-profit organisation that Tom and I established back in 2008. It's really an umbrella organisation, and it does a lot of work around facilitating and supporting people with an interest in rivers. About 9 years ago, we were successful in getting a grant through the Biodiversity Fund, and that fund was focusing on carbon sequestration and boosting biodiversity. And so Rivers of Carbon was born. So the carbon there was a nod to the carbon sequestration and the focus of the government at the time. Obviously, we've had governments post the Biodiversity Fund one, which was a Labor government, who are not quite so keen on climate change and carbon sequestration, but the name has still stuck, and we find that it's a real draw card for people coming to work with us. And I want to talk a little bit about why that's the case. So as we mentioned earlier, I'm talking about social capital, and I think it's really important that we actually invest in ourselves, which is why I've started it off by saying, who, me? The case for investing in social capital. So a little bit about my why I do this. This is in the bottom of the Breadbow Gorge at near a property called Scottsdale, which is owned by Bush Heritage, who is another of the partners we work with. And I'm here in the middle with my great BCF hat on. I love rivers, and I've come to love them more and more the more time I spend on them. I think they're amazing and beautiful, and they're really parts of the landscape that are transdisciplinary. So you don't just want to know about the ecology of a river or the geomorphology or the physical habitat. You actually need to understand the cultural and the spiritual and the social elements that all make up rivers. Not to mention, of course, the economics, which is what we often hear most about in the Murray-Darling Basin with things like the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. In a drying climate, rivers are becoming even more important because they're vital sources of refugia in a very harsh climate which we experienced last summer. This stretch of river went right down, and we were fortunate that the gorge itself didn't burn, but just below where we're sitting here in our kayaks did burn. And so we're actually doing a lot of work at the moment trying to help stop a lot of ash and sediment washing into this river and smothering it, and also helping landowners rebuild as they recover post a firestorm. So my why is very much around bringing people together. As a social scientist, I never thought I'd ended up running an Australian River Restoration Centre, but that's just what happened. And I think it's been a real gift to be able to bring the social science approach and thinking into a physical, what's often considered just a physical or ecological thing to look after, which is rivers. So I guess the basic philosophy is that when we're alone, we can do a little, as you can see with this firefly here, making a little bit of a light. But when we're all together, we can do so much more. And this is this whole beautiful little pool lit up by lots and lots of fireflies. And that's what I think we need to look at, you know, issues like the drying climate, like looking after rivers. We really need to work together. I do believe that we're all here to make a difference, and organisations like yours is one that attracts people who want to make a difference, who want to feel that they're doing something. We want to make an impact. We actually want to achieve something. And really importantly, we want to create ripples of change. And so the people I work with in river management are no different to any other group that is brought together by a shared sense of purpose. We're really wanting to protect and restore our rivers. However, we sometimes feel like this. It's very precarious. We've just been through COVID. Before that, we had bushfires. Before that, we had lots of talk about the drying climate. And so it can feel very precarious, and that you're going to get swept into a very deep hole. And I often reflect on how we can deal with this sort of a situation and feeling so vulnerable. And I think climate change is a really good example of an area where we really heighten people's fears about climate change. And often when we talk about climate change, it's looked at as a war or a combat or a struggle. So it's really very sort of confrontational language. And I kind of think that that's not actually particularly helpful, because when we scare people, what tends to happen is that they switch off and actually don't want to engage at all. So rather than accepting uncertainty, I think that what we're seeing, you know, throughout all areas of life really, is that we're trying to control what we can't actually control. And so we're trying to put limits and boundaries and get everything right, because as humans, we actually don't like things that are unpredictable. We try to perfect, make things absolutely perfect. And we also avoid what we perceive to be a risk. For me, in the area of science communication, I've noticed there's an increasing tendency to want 100% certainty about science, which really it goes against what science is all about. Science is about exploration. We can't necessarily guarantee we're going to get an answer. It might take us down a completely different tangent. So I think we need to be more open about the fact that we have imperfect knowledge, and that people can make their own decisions and conclusions when they're interpreting some science if we actually share it more widely. This is important to me because I think we tend to forget that humans are pretty amazing. We're highly adaptable. We're able to come up with amazing solutions, and we can evolve and adapt. And I do actually just highlight here the mobile phone. I'm not quite so sure in this adaptation picture that this is necessarily the goal. I really think we need to go one step further if we're going to survive, because we've become a bit, it's become our second brain, I think. So where do I fit in all of this? Well, for me, I really believe that investing in other people to reach their potential is something that gives my life meaning. So as a result, I run mentoring programs and leadership programs. I facilitate a lot of groups, and I really try and foster a sense of collective action and being in this together. You know, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, once you've got your basic food and shelter covered, the next thing on his pyramid is belonging. And so as human beings, we need to feel like we belong, we're part of something. And so this is what I try to create through my work, an ability to feel like we belong together. And so to do that, you really need to invest in your social capital. And this is a group of people who've come together for a riparian management workshop. So the riparian zone is the zone of riverbank that runs alongside rivers. And so this was all about riparian management. And they're from a really wide area of background and interest. So you've got some who are horticulturalists through to professional government policy people through to people who work at catchment level or land care groups. So why invest in social capital? Well, I think that natural and social capital are mutually supportive. I don't think you can have one without the other. So when we think of our natural capital, which is our environment, we also have social capital, which is trust, reciprocity. It's all networks and relationships, and together they work so that we enable ecosystems on both sides. So we actually need to be investing in both. When I first started in river management back in the mid-90s, after I'd finished my PhD, I was struck by the focus that we had on technical information. We had a lot of technical information about how our rivers worked, but we failed to connect that with the people side of things. So you can't just produce a scientific report and shove it out there and expect people to take it up if you don't think about how you're going to make that report meaningful for someone so that they can actually engage with it and it's relevant to them in their life. And that's how we get natural and social capacity and capital being mutually supportive. So this is really how we run our Rivers of Carbon program. So we go out and talk to land care or landholders and ask what they would like to get done on their property. And then we look to see whether our basic values, I guess, and our beliefs about what needs to happen on that little stretch of river or creek or whatever it might be, actually are in alignment. Sometimes they're not, and that's okay. It's all right that people don't believe exactly what you believe. But when you are actually able to find a common purpose, then that's when the magic happens and you get to do great things on ground. So when you put people into the picture, it makes everything so much more relevant, meaningful, and achievable. If we don't think about people and then wonder why our message doesn't get taken up, it's really because you've failed to connect with another person. So that's where we really need to have a great deal of empathy in order to understand the position that someone else is coming from. We don't necessarily have to agree with that position, but we can at least listen and understand why they might think that way and look for some common ground. So people then, this is a Women in Leadership program, people are very worthwhile investments in my view. So often in river management, we look to go and work in, say, another catchment or another stretch of river to take what we've learnt on our river. But I think that that's actually quite limiting. It can be beneficial to a certain extent, but for me, rather than me going to one other catchment and spending all that effort in one other place, I would rather be working with all of these people who come from different rivers across Australia and share what I know so that I can also learn from them. So for me, investing in people actually makes more sense for the sorts of work that I'm doing than investing river by river, because they all have their own networks and connections that they can then use to go further. And I like this quote by Patrick Lencioni about telling people that they're doing a great job. But because when you don't tell people that they're doing a great job, when you don't make their work meaningful for them, then he says, you know, it's like taking money out of their pockets and throwing it into a fire. And it's that really simple thing about saying thank you, recognising what people are doing, rather than going back and thinking that people are motivated by money. I am yet to meet a landowner that's motivated by money in terms of wanting a grant for fencing out a riparian zone. I just don't think they exist. They're all there because they actually want their river or creek or wetland to be in a better state than it currently is, so they can pass that on for future generations. So people are incredibly important. The other area that I focus my work is on networks. And as I say to people, networks, your networks are gold, because all of us represent one of those little points there, and all of us have our own networks. So if you can influence and work with one person, then when you're communicating successfully, when you're sparking off each other, you then go and radiate out to a whole range of other networks. And I really like this quote by Margaret Heffernan, where she talks about, if you really want to look at the people who are influential in an organisation, it's the ones that interact the most with people. Like that, those are the people, the network nodes, that are incredibly important. They're not necessarily the leaders in an organisation. And so a lot of the people that I work with might be a land care facilitator or a local land service employee. They're not necessarily the people that head up a large organisation. They're not necessarily the most well networked. So networks are incredibly important. Relationships are another area that we focus a lot of our attention and time. So we're a tight-knit group. We do spend a lot of time together understanding where we're coming from and investing in having fun as well, which is really important. If it's all serious all of the time, then you actually won't maximise the benefits of working together. So we have quite a lot of fun. And that's because when you invest in relationships, then you're investing in connection. And this is a Brené Brown quote where she talks about connection as being the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. And so we try and apply this when we're dealing with landholders that we're meeting for the first time, or a land care group, or an organisation like the Commonwealth Environmental Water Office, where we manage environmental flows. Whoever or whatever the organisation is, you really want to spend time making sure that you focus on feeling seen, heard, and valued. So often in a conversation, people are just waiting to say something rather than listening and then speaking. So that's what connection is all about. When you get that right, then you're looking at the real currency of social capital, which is trust. And we hear quite a lot about trust and how quickly trust can be broken. And once it's broken, it takes a very long time to rebuild. So for me, trust is really important in the relationships that I have with the clients of the River Restoration Centre and with the people that receive our newsletter. We try and be as authentic as possible and as honest as possible as well, so that we can say, look, we don't have perfect knowledge, we don't have perfect answers about how rivers might need to be managed, but we do know this and this and this, or this is how we're interpreting this latest bit of information. And I think this quote by Simon Sinek is really interesting, in that if we don't have that trust, we actually work against each other to protect ourselves. And I think that this is really quite common in the area of climate science and the climate change discussion more generally, is that often people are trying, it seems to me anyway, that they're trying to outsmart each other or expose someone else for having the wrong view. So there's a lot of judgment going on. And that actually goes against our inclination to actually want to come together if you're in a trusted environment. So I think more time spent in creating environments that empower and engage people would be a good thing. So continuing with the Lencioni work, you can see here that if you're actually going to be effective at building trust, then you actually have to accept and be open about who you are and what you stand for, and actually accept that that's going to mean that you're going to be vulnerable. And I think in our current political climate, this isn't necessarily encouraged. And so for me, authenticity is really important, and authenticity is about talking about yourself and what gives your life meaning and purpose. And I do believe that if you're going to have someone trust with you, that's a really important way of actually behaving. And so that's certainly what we do through our program. And when you do that, then you actually end up flipping your pyramid out, so that you're then working on the bedrock of what is able to build trust. And so you can see there that we've got sharing, communication, reciprocity, and knowledge. And those are all things that the River Restoration Centre does and that Rivers of Carbon does. So we share our knowledge, we communicate widely, we're reciprocal, and I think that that then enables us to build bonds of loyalty and trust. And so those are the ways that we try to run our business. And this image also comes from Margaret Heffernan's book. She's got a great little book called Beyond Measure, which is a terrific read. It's very easy to read. She's also got a very good TED Talk. I'm a bit of a TED Talk devotee, and so Margaret Heffernan's one of the people that I like to watch. So in terms of where I'm at the moment, these are a few of the things that I am doing in my life, and I'm encouraging the people I work with as well, particularly in these really difficult times. I am trying to practice kindness and empathy, and I'm not always successful, I'd have to admit, but I do try, because I think if we are going to be to develop trust, then actually having empathy is important. I work hard on trying to understand the perspectives of irrigators in the Murray-Darling Basin, because for me, of course, providing water for the environment is fundamentally important in a drying climate. And so, and I work on environmental flows. So it's trying to understand why and how people are reacting differently to the information that I get, and putting myself in their shoes. It doesn't mean that I agree with them, and it doesn't mean that I'm actually going to give them environmental water, but at least I can try and understand from their perspective, and also from their family legacy, how long they've been there, and all those sorts of things. It's important to do that because Dr. Fiona Kerr, who's actually a neuroscientist, was saying that those of us that are able to do complex problem solving are people that can actually feel empathy and understand other people's point of view. It actually makes your brain a lot more flexible and able to process complex problem solving, which I think is really interesting. So it's also a uniquely human thing. Animals can't do this to the extent that we can. It really does separate our brains out, I think, so it's an important skill. Another thing I think that is really important is that we need to continue to promote diversity. So we tend to hear the same people speaking over and over again, and it does tend to be men. And for me, I think having more women speaking, greater ethnic diversity and transdisciplinary is also important, whether it be climate change or river management. I think women do tend to provide a different perspective, a different approach, which can add value to a lot of the great work that is being done. So actually having a more diverse range of spokespeople and out there doing things. For myself, I don't actually court the media. I don't enjoy that terribly much. I'll do radio interviews and these sorts of things. But I feel that I'm more effective in many ways, not going after the big interviews really, because I can affect more people who are doing similar things to me and continue to inspire them, and then they can go and use their networks. So it's being, I guess that's a bit about that authenticity, where you feel comfortable and where you feel you can make a difference. So yeah, promoting diversity and having more women and ethnic diversity, I think, is really incredibly important, because then we hear different voices. And I love this quote, you know, diversity is the art of thinking independently together. So we should be able to disagree. It's okay to disagree. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with us. It shouldn't rupture a relationship. It should enable us to have a more robust discussion. So the third thing that I encourage people in my sector to do is to reflect. And the reason this is important is because all of us are running so fast all the time. You know, that duck analogy with the flippers underneath paddling madly away. We don't get a lot of time to stop and think about, so why am I doing this again? And I think that that's essential, because when you have a strong sense of purpose and belief, then it actually just enables you to keep doing what you're doing and to keep caring. And that, for me, I think is really important. Conversations that connect, and also conversations in which you argue with other people, I think are good. So we run a lot of workshops where, well, not so much at the moment, we've been doing them virtually, but we often have sessions at our workshops where we will throw out ideas and get a whole range of people from different backgrounds talking about them, challenging them, and basically having a great conversation. Great conversations are wonderful for building trust and also rapport. So this is us having a conversation. We use things like conversation mapping where everyone has a pen. So you don't have one person with the pen scribing, because that person then has all the power. You make sure everybody has a pen, and they're different colours. And so at the end of this particular exercise that I'm standing over here now, I'm making sure that we've got every pen with a different colour, which is a different person, on that page. So it's little things like that where we highlight power dynamics, and I talk quite a lot about things just like if you're going into a meeting and you want to control someone who might be always dominating a meeting, how you sit, body language, all those sorts of things. And that's all about having a really effective conversation. And another one from Margaret Heffernan that I love is that you don't actually want an echo chamber. You want to have collaborators who you can disagree with. You don't want them just to agree with you all the time, because that's actually not terribly effective in getting you to think more broadly and innovatively. So just as I come to a conclusion, so many meetings look like this, where you've got everyone looking at their own device as they're waiting for the meeting to start. I really encourage people to look up from their phones, to look out, look at the world that's all around them. And for me, in terms of building resilient communities in the context of a changing climate, I really love this quote by Amy Poehler, where she says, you know, no one's here today because they did it on their own. And so groups like yours and groups like Rivers of Carbon and this group here is a mentoring program. It is finding people who will inspire and support you, because I think that that then enables you to continue to care about things, so that you don't switch off, and so that you've got other people that can go with you as you actually try to make a difference, which is really what I think we're all here to do. So with that, I'll just finish there. That's on that beautiful stretch of river again in the Breadbow Gorge. This was a workshop where we got to go for a paddle.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our CCL channel by hitting the button in the top left-hand corner of this screen. Spread the word of CCL by using the share icon to as many of your contacts as possible. Thank you. See you next video.